Hello, friends. Today's book that I have to share with you is called The Tales of Tiptoes Lightly. And Tiptoes Lightly is a fairy, and this is a book with many short stories. It has some gnomes in it, and fairies, and a whole bunch of forest friends. So, this is Fiona's book pick. And a little bit fun facts about Fiona. Her favorite color is aqua. She loves to play with her friends, and she would like to be a singer when she grows up. So I'm going to start with some of the winter stories in here. Again, they're just a bunch of short stories, and I'm going to start with one that says Jack Frost pays a visit. In the morning, the sun shone brightly through the forest. A sunbeam reached in and touched Jeremy Mouse on the face. "Wake and rise, Master Mouse," called the sun. "It's time to wake the sleepyheads in the house." Jeremy Mouse yawned and stretched. He reached over and held Tiptoes' hands till she opened her eyes. Again, Tiptoes is a fairy. There's also Pine Cone and Pepper Pot in here who are gnomes, and they all live in this tree together in the forest, just so you understand what's going on. Jeremy Mouse went to Pine Cone and Pepper Pot. They were snoring in bed. Their beards were still wrapped round their heads, only their noses stuck out. All he saw were bushy beards, sticking up noses, and red caps. Jeremy Mouse pulled their toes and said, "Wake up, you lazy legs. It's time to get up." Pine Cone and Pepper Pot grunted and groaned. They stretched their arms over their heads and yawned. Then they unwound their beards, put on their boots, and washed their faces in icy cold water. "Look!" cried Tiptoes from the window. "Jack Frost came last night. It's his first visit." Sure enough, frost covered the ground and ice crystals glittered in the morning sun. "Is Jack Frost a gnome or a fairy?" asked Jeremy Mouse. "A gnome," answered Pepper Pot. "A fairy," said Tiptoes at the same time. "He's certainly a gnome," declared Pepper Pot. "He makes crystals." "He's definitely a fairy," said Tiptoes. "He flies through the air, breathing frost on leaves and branches." "Why don't you ask him yourself?" said Jeremy. "Then you'll know for sure." "Good idea," they agreed. "So where does he live?" asked Jeremy. Tiptoes and Pepper Pot looked at each other. They shook their heads and shrugged. "We don't know." "Oh, goody! We'll have to go adventuring," cried Jeremy Mouse. "Can we eat first?" And let's see. We're going to skip ahead to they went on a journey, and this is where Jack Frost tells his tale. The sun went down. It colored the snow pink and orange. Then the moon came up. She was still thin and sharp, but her light made the snow shimmer silvery blue. They sat still and listened. Suddenly, they heard a cracking noise. "It's Jack Frost!" cried Tiptoes and ran outside. Pine Cone and Pepper Pot ran after her. Jeremy Mouse only stuck his head out of the snow cave. He didn't want Jack Frost to nip his toes, and certainly not his tail. "Jack Frost! Jack Frost!" cried Tiptoes. "We've come to pay a visit." Jack Frost landed next to them. He was pale, icy blue, and his arms and fingers were long and glistening. His eyes were sharp, and his wings crackled like breaking ice whenever he moved. He looked so fierce that Pine Cone and Pepper Pot were afraid to open their mouths. It became so chilly they wrapped their beards around their necks and pulled their hats over their ears. "Afraid I might nip your noses?" crackled Jack Frost at the gnomes. Pine Cone and Pepper Pot clamped their hands over their shoes and shook their heads. Now they were really scared. "Jack Frost," asked Tiptoes in her most polite voice, "are you a giant gnome or a giant fairy? Pepper Pot says you're a gnome because you make crystals, and I say you're a fairy because you fly through the air." "Well, well," said Jack Frost, "curious are you. I'll tell you my story, and then you can tell me what I am." Jack Frost settled close to the ground. Every time he breathed, clouds of ice crystals flew out of his mouth and settled over them. Tiptoes didn't seem to mind, but Pinecone and Pepperpot were soon covered with a layer of frost. "Once," said Jack Frost, "there lived a fairy queen. She was the queen of the air. When she brushed her hair, breezes blew gently on earth. When she spoke, gusts of winds snatched people's hats away. When she ran, leaves and branches blew off the trees. And when she flew in the air, her mighty wings tossed forests to the ground, and terrible storms raged at sea and sank ships. One day the King of Ice saw her and said, 'You shall be my bride.' But the Queen of Air refused. 'Why should I marry you?' she asked. 'You stay on the ground, and if the sun shines strongly, you melt away.' The Ice King was angry and tried to grab her. The Queen of Air whirled away, but not quick enough. He caught a piece of her dress and tore it free. 'That's all you shall have of me,' shouted the Queen of the Air, and away she flew in a storm. "And who is that piece of dress caught by the Ice King?" asked Jack Frost. "You are!" cried Pinecone and Pepperpot. "Then that's your answer," said Jack Frost, crackling like ice. He stretched his wings and leapt into the air. Down the valleys he flew, spreading frost wherever he went. The air turned cold as ice when he flapped his wings, and if people did not wrap up warmly, Jack Frost nipped at their fingers and toes. Just like our song. Well, thank you. We'll read more of that at school. That was a very good book. Thank you for sharing, Fiona. Everybody have a great day.